door, I'll knock him downstairs. And being the idiot I've always been, I turned up 5 minutes later, and Jack Pinter answered the door. His face seemed rather dark. He wasn't the usual jolly Jack Pinter, I knew. I thought he must have toothache. I'm not very sensitive, you know. But anyway, he was lovely, and they were lovely. And he loved them to the very end, and he wrote one of, I secretly think, his best poems were his plays. But one of his best non-play poems is one about his father, when his father died, called Death. Terribly. Could you bear it if I read it to you? Do you want to do the whole of the bush?
Well, I asked Harry to read that statement that Harold wrote as a conscientious objector, and I thought it might be interesting for Henry to read the final page and a half or so of Harold's Nobel Prize acceptance speech, his lecture. My thinking was the consistency of thought and commitment to ideals that it represented. Embedded in that is this poem called Death. And may we possibly indulge him?
Just the poem. All right, chaps.
Absolutely.
It goes like this. When his father died, he wrote this poem called Death. It went, "Where was the dead body found? Who found the dead body? Was the dead body dead when found? How was the dead body found? Who was the dead body? Who was the father or daughter or brother or uncle or sister or mother or son of the dead and abandoned body? Was the body dead when abandoned? Was the body abandoned? By whom had it been abandoned? Was the dead body naked or dressed for a journey? Who made you declare the dead body dead? Did you declare the dead body dead? How well did you know the dead body? How did you know the dead body was dead? Did you wash the dead body? Did you close both its eyes? Did you bury the body? Did you leave it abandoned? Did you kiss the dead body? It's a lovely poem, isn't it?
A bit depressing.
There you are. You tried to be serious.
Should we get one question?
Oh, guys.
Quality authors, playwrights, provide a script that needs no revision. I mean, I'm stunned that Pinter didn't revise anything, but how often does it happen?
Well, of course he did revise.
Okay.
He just didn't do it in rehearsal.
Okay.
I mean, Henry can speak to this, I think, very, very eloquently. But I think what one has to remember about Pinter is he's a poet playwright, and therefore, and he's an actor poet playwright. So he's literally turned every line in his own voice, and turned it and looked at it, and the ruthless cutting. He once said, maybe I cut too much, but he left so much out, and he road tested every line and every character, so that he really finished each line. And that's why it's so important that actors don't come along and say, well, wouldn't it be better if I said "in" at the beginning of this? Because the work's being done, and that's the point. What do you want to say?
No, I think what you say is right. He actually did revise, but he revised before. And he wasn't a dictator. He loved and was excited, as Harry said earlier, loved and was excited by discoveries in his plays, by the actors and by the director. But at the same time, he was terribly concerned that the script, as it was written, was presented, nothing different.
But in the British Library, you can see the drafts of many of the plays and how they develop and change. So yeah, he's a writer like any other in that sense. He just, unlike many writers, he presents something that's truly wrought and complete, as a poet must, you know.
You know, an analogy that occurs to me is it's kind of heresy in acting terms to suggest that actors know their lines before the first day of rehearsal. What are you talking about? What about the process of inner, outer and sideways discovery? But Noel Coward, and Olivier too, I think, certainly Noel Coward, always insisted that all his actors knew all their lines before rehearsal started. Now you'd think that was a straitjacket, but I always ask when I'm directing that actors know their parts, because it allows them so much freedom. When your Hamlet knows every line backwards, it doesn't mean that they've imposed some straitjacket on themselves or the text, and no more does Harold's strictness about his lines. It isn't a straitjacket, it's actually quite liberating. So you can't move beyond the confines of this text. You have to discover within it.
Unfortunately, it precludes our ever working together.
Well, perhaps that's for the best.
I did detect an unfortunate note of relief in your voice, Harry.
Not in the least.
His dialogue is unique. He said something interesting about his dialogue not being used to exchange information, but it serving a defensive posture. And so I wonder if you could expound a little bit on that.
Well, it's just, you know how, apart from sort of, would you like some sugar in your coffee, most people prattle on, and quite rightly too, but in his plays, which are so tense with defense and attack and jostling for superiority, and jostling sometimes, like in the caretaker, for actual territorial possession of a space. Your inner space, the other person's space, your status together, you know, like in old times, you know, the way the two people jostle for Kate and Anna, and, you know, they jostle each other, but the lines aren't just really. When someone, as they often do in Pinter, as a non sequitur, Mr. Kidd in the room often replies with a non sequitur. It's never an accident. They don't want, they've heard perfectly well. They don't want to reply. They're in the process of defense or attack or preserving themselves or their situation. And although everybody knows that goes on in life, not all the time, thank God, no one really had made that so explicit in a play before. And it's so unusual and marvelous. And it brought to life something that I don't think Harold did himself justice on in the movie, about silences and pauses. Because the fact is, when you get dialogue so rich, so filled sometimes with menace and attack and defense, rich dialogue, suspended from that dialogue is the play. It's as if Pinter's the puppet master, but his marvelous words are just really suspending the life of the play, which exists under the words, and in the pauses, and in the silences. That's where the life of Pinterland lives. And so I think that use of the ambiguities, the non sequiturs of speech, are never there by accident, and where Harry's comments on closely worked language is terribly important. Does any of that make sense?
Would you like to give us an example of that?
Gosh. Well, you know when Mr. Kidd said,
I didn't mean that. I meant by reading the scene.
oh,
together.
oh, oh, no, I could never do that.
Oh, yes, you could.
I think this is a particularly good one to shed
Oh,
light
heaven,
on.
the script has just arrived in my hand. It would be absolutely discourteous to refuse it. Fortunately, I'd come prepared.
This is the opening sequence from the home